Thank you all for spending your lunch hour with the Washington Green Amendment team. Hope you've cozied up with your lunch or cup of tea for today's discussion about a Washington Green Amendment in Washington State. My name is David Kipnis. I go by he, him. They is a great pronoun too. I'm part of the Washington State Green Amendment Strategic Team. I'll be moderating for today. Mana Offrecht, who's also part of the strategic team, is on the chat posting information as we go. And Bridget, from Maya's side of the team, is also assisting today. Our format today, we've got two dynamic speakers here today to inform you about the Green Amendment. We'll hear opening remarks from Representative Lakanoff, who's championed the Washington Green Amendment since 2021. Following that, we'll have a presentation from Maya K. Van Russum, the national organizer and founder of the Green Amendment movement, who will provide a context for the Green Amendment and lead a discussion based on your questions. And you'll be able to place your questions into the chat or raise your hand through the emoji prompt as we go through that process. We want to honor your time today, and we'll end promptly at 1 o'clock. But those who are able to continue the discussion will be able to stay on for an additional 15 minutes after 1 o'clock. So we offer that to you all as well, and maybe a smaller discussion type setting. In the previous years, in our pursuit of a Green Amendment here in Washington State, we've consistently heard from both Republican and Democratic legislatures, show me the constituency support. We now have 24 organizations that have allowed us to use their organization as an outlet of information to their constituents as we build a statewide support for the Washington Green Amendment state. There are about 200 people who registered for today's event. And a few years ago when we did it, there were only 80. So momentum is building here in Washington State. And thank you all for being here as we move forward. If you have an organization that you might want to, that you are involved in, that you might want to join this growing movement, we'd love to hear from you. You can contact me directly through an email provided in the chat, or you can go on to the Green Amendment app to get information about what's going on, not only in Washington, but around the country in Green Amendment movements in 13 states throughout the country. The Green Amendment is a bipartisan effort to protect our health, raise government accountability to do so, and then naturally this requires the protection of our environment. The GA team does this by acknowledging that this is a beautiful place in which we live, that the land we are on is the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, the original habitants in this land, who have hunted, fished, gathered, and taken care of these lands, and who honor and continue to honor and bring light to their ancient heritage. We humbly offer this land acknowledgement with gratefulness for their enduring care of our shared lands and waters. May we honor and nurture our relationship with the Coast Salish neighbors as we shoulder our shared responsibilities to their homeland where we all reside today. And our first speaker today is a leader in the Washington State House of Representatives since 2019, and currently leads legislation which ranges from affordable housing and homelessness, education, workforce development, Native issues, agriculture, and of course, environmental resiliency here in Washington State, including public health, and holds a day job as well. Needless to say, she's a very active and busy person. Representative Lakanoff, thank you for spending time with us today.
I have to say, can you hear me, David?
I can hear you great.
Hi, Sharon. Hello to my constituents. Hello to everybody who's here. It's wonderful to see you, David. First and foremost, I'm Representative Lakanoff. My Flinkett name is Hik-Cha-Si. The Green Amendment means so much to me because this Green Amendment sets the precedence that my Flinkett name, Hik-Cha-Si, which comes from the sustainability of the natural resources up in the in-stream flow where there's cool and clean habitat where baby frogs come from, right? Follow me for just a moment. You're up in the in-stream flow, right? You're up where those little baby frogs are. You're up where the baby fish are, where it's green. Hik-Cha-Si means that place of beginning. It is the beautiful place that my name has come from since time immemorial, passed down from my grandmother's grandmother's grandmother. Without that place existing, when these waters and these places and these resources are gone, my name no longer exists. I will never exist again. It is that concept because my culture, my spirit, my bloodlines, who I am as a Tlingit woman, my responsibility is passed through that name. But without that place and those resources, I am no longer allowed to exist. This is why the Green Amendment is so important, because in every one of your own bloodlines, right? In every one of your responsibilities and every one of your lifeways and every one of the decisions you make, you have a right to a healthy environment. You have a right to cool and clean water. You have a right to clean air. You have a right for a prosperous job. You have a right for a prosperous economy. But none of that will exist without a good, clean, healthy environment that sustains our resources, our people, and our economy. I want to say thank you to David Kipnis. David has been with me as a good friend, as a colleague, as someone I deeply respect, who's brought the Green Amendment to life in Washington State. Endless hours, their team, his colleagues, and many of you. Iris, thank you for the beautiful, beautiful scarf. I see that purple scarf there. Without all of them in the background, Monica, love you. We wouldn't be here today and there wouldn't be 200 people supporting this. We wouldn't have incredible environmental organizations such as Front and Centered that has 150 people of color, underrepresented, nonprofit organizations saying, hey, we matter. We matter. People who love the environment matter. People who want prosperous jobs matter. People who want their grandchildren's grandchildren's grandchildren to have cool and clean water matter, right? Simple things in life, but it's a sustainability of what we're looking for. The Green Amendment, if you pass it in the Washington State legislature and it passes on to the next steps, which I can't speak about, I can tell you this. It is like the auntie at the head of a table. Those of you who have aunties at the head of the table, we think grandmas are tough, but it's the aunties, right? It is the auntie of all policies at the head of the table in the Washington State Constitution that says we all Washingtonians have a right to a healthy environment. Every one of us, right? A healthy environment doesn't recognize what gender you are, who you love. It doesn't recognize a demographic. It doesn't recognize how much money you make. It doesn't. A healthy environment recognizes all. And that's what our Constitution is, right? All. All of you are here today to be able to stand up and recognize that we have a constitutional right. And the right is going to be incorporated to make sure that we carry every policy over it, right? Auntie sits at the head of the table. Every environmental, natural resource, economic, health, everything trickles down after that. And this policy just guides it. So today, I want to thank everybody for being here today. It is my intention. I'm working hard to have the Environmental and Energy Chair, Beth Dolio, and her ranking member, Mary Dye, hear this bill this year. I went from 4 to 5 people testifying the first year. Now I hear I might have 145, right? Sherry, that's beautiful. Gayla, that's beautiful. Sharon, everybody, make your voices heard because only you can make it heard, and come in virtually and sign in. Maya, I love you. As a freshman, I heard Maya speaking about the Green Amendment and I never gave up, right? As a freshman legislator sitting with environmental legislators across this nation, I received my freshman year the National Environmental Legislator of the Year as a freshman. And Maya taught me that changing the Constitution matters and only you, the people, can do it because I work for all of you. So let's make sure we have this bill heard this year. David, I'm working hard to get it on there. We may not move the bill this year, you guys, because it's a supplemental year, it's a 60-day session, but David's got 200 people going. So we need more. And I need, if you guys can get into and get the little ones and the youth engaged, that's our next step, David. I want youth standing up and saying, take care of my environment for me. Don't leave me standing to take care of the mess you created, right? So with that, you guys, I have to get back into caucus. I love you guys all very much. I couldn't do this without you. Um,
Yes, thank you so much.
that's
Please help me
great.
in
Thank you so
thanking.
much, David.
Yeah, please help me in thanking Representative Lakanoff for her effort and time and placing your favorite emoji in the chat. Thank you so much. You know, I think we have a goal today that you listening on today will get what you need, will like what you hear, will get some basic information so that you can talk to 5 people who are new to the concept of a green amendment and get them interested. And then through that, they can contact us as we build momentum. Our next speaker is Maya K. Van Rossum. Maya is the founder of the Green Amendments for the Generations, a national nonprofit organization dedicated to inspiring the passage of the Green Amendments in every state constitution across their nation, and also at the federal level when the time is right. She's an author and has a recent book entitled The Green Amendment, Securing Our Right to a Healthy Environment. Maya leads the regional advocacy organization called the Delaware Riverkeeper Network that works throughout 4 states of the Delaware River watershed, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, using advocacy, science, and litigation to promote the Delaware River and its tributaries. In 2019, Maya was named one of Philadelphia's Business Journal's Power 100, was named one of the 10 most influential people of 2015 when it comes to energy issues by SNL Energy. She's the recipient of the 2022 Pennsylvania Interfaith Power and Light Visionary Award. She's testified by invitation 3 times before the U.S. congressional committees, and she founded the Environmental Law Clinic in Temple's Beasley School of Law. Maya received the Giraffe Hero Award given to those who have the courage to stick their necks out for the common good. Today, Maya is with us, lifting our indefeasible right to clean air, clean water, and a healthy environment here in Washington State, also known as the Green Amendment. Maya, it's great to see you again. Thanks for being here.
So what a kind introduction. I will say it's a true honor to be here, and it's really been a wonderful joy and honor to be part of the Washington Green Amendment team that's really been working hard to make this happen. Representative Lakanoff is a great champion, but you have David and Monica and Iris and Mimi and Kate and Sherry who are on this call with us, and so many others that really have come together to lift up the Green Amendment movement and to bring us to this point of incredible progress where we do have so many people who don't just want to learn more, but as Representative Lakanoff has said, have already expressed an interest in wanting to be active and wanting to even testify in support of the Green Amendment when it comes before the Washington State Legislature. So it's really a joy to be here. We hope will be the first of several trainings. And so this one's going to start with the basics. So for some of you, this may be a little bit of a repeat or a refresher. For others of you, this may be new information. But if it's either way, we hope that you will engage in robust conversation and Q&A at the end, and also be prepared to follow up with us on future Green Amendment trainings, where we're going to talk more, dig in more and more on the values and importance of a Green Amendment and how it works. But let's really just start from the beginning, start with the basics. You already got my introduction. We won't do that again. But, you know, in Washington State, as in every state across the nation, we are facing so many challenges, whether you're talking about something as big as the climate crisis, you're talking about air pollution, water pollution, you're talking about devastation of communities by floods or droughts or wildfires. You are in a community that has some industrial operation next door that is wreaking havoc on your health and on your family and on the quality of life in your community. Whatever it is, we have so many challenges across the state, and people are constantly asking the question, what is it that I should do? Where can I best invest my time to make a difference when it comes to protecting the environment and protecting my community? And what I say to everybody is we don't have the luxury of picking one thing. You may pick one issue to dig in on and invest your time in, but when it comes to strategies, we really need an all-in approach as a community. We need to be protesting and advocating. We need to be testifying and litigating. We need to be voting good people into office that are going to help us make a difference. But one thing that people don't often think about that really is essential for us to achieve success in this modern era when it comes to environmental protection and restoration is we need to also be transforming the system of laws and governance under which and in which we do all of this important environmental protection work. And that's because the way our current system of environmental protection laws are written and operate in Washington state at the federal level, at states across the nation, really leaves we the people and our environment at an incredible disadvantage when it comes to seeking and securing critical protections. The way our laws are written in Washington state and beyond is they are really written in a way that focuses on managing environmental pollution, degradation, and harm, accepting it as a foregone conclusion, something we must allow to happen if we're going to have economic development or a modern life. And as a result, this system of law sort of hops to the end of the process, accepts the pollution and degradation as a foregone conclusion, and says, okay, what reviews are we going to require? What permits are we going to require in order to manage the how, the when, the where this environmental pollution, degradation, and harm is going to take place? This system of laws and governance, when you dig down into it, how they're written, how they're interpreted, and how they're implemented, it is not a system that is focused first on prevention of pollution, degradation, and harm, not presuming it should be allowed to happen or that it's even necessary, and starting from the question of how can we prevent it first. In this system of laws, there are lots of gaps and loopholes. There are a lot of things that are allowed to happen. There are emerging contaminants and toxins like PFAS, right? That man-made family of chemicals known as forever chemicals that are devastating so many lives and environments now today because PFAS came into being and was used by industry for years and years and years, used by the military, used by the government for years and years and years because of an absence of laws or regulations that prevented this man-made family of chemicals from being used in devastating ways that allowed it to just slither into the environment, into our bodies, and into our environments. We have lots of industries like the fracking industry that worked with legislators to carve out little and large loopholes that they can slide through in order to evade environmental protections and regulations and reviews that would apply to every other industry. I mean, when you put it together, right, there are just lots of gaps and loopholes that allow a lot of bad things to happen where we're not even managing the pollution, degradation, and harm. We're just allowing it to evade regulation at all. In this system of laws, when you look at it in the final analysis, the language, that how the laws and the regulations are interpreted, how they're applied, whether or not they're enforced, all in the final analysis comes down to the legislators and the regulators to decide. They get to decide how clean is clean. And as we know in our political system in Washington and beyond, industry and people with money have much greater access to the levers of power to help these legislators and regulators decide how they're going to interpret and apply these laws. And so when you put it all together, we really do have communities across the state that are suffering from pollution, degradation, and harm. So what we need is we need some sort of transformational change that's going to change this system and reverse it so it focuses on the people and prevention first. Passing one more law in the state of Washington is not going to do it. First off, there is no law that's going to be able to cover every issue known an unknown, yet to be developed, yet to come, yet a toxin that and an industry that we can't even imagine yet, right? There's just, or even all those that we do know, how to write a law to manage every single issue involving the environment in every single context. It's literally just impossible. That's why we have a system where we have laws, and then there are regulations, and then there are permits, right? And it's sort of this system of greater and greater granularity. But just passing another law, we're not going to be able to cover all of the concerns, interests, and issues that are creating problems in the state of Washington when it comes to environmental protection. We really do need some overarching protection, something that overarches all of government action that will help transform how the current system of laws and governance operates. It's got to be a change that reorients our government to focus on prevention of harm first, not acceptance as a foregone conclusion to be managed, but thinking first, how can we prevent the pollution, the degradation, the devastating harm that may come from some sort of government action or decision or regulation that is before us. It has to be a transformation of the system so that in the final analysis, we, the people, have an ultimate say at the table. It's not just up to the politicians and the regulators to decide how clean is clean and whether or not we, the people, are being properly protected by our current system of environmental protection laws. There has to be a place for the people at the table all the way up to the end, so that when our government officials get it fundamentally wrong, we, the people, can take hold, can take action in order to protect ourselves and say to government, you got it wrong. So we need transformational change. And that is what the Green Amendment is. That is what the Washington Green Amendment is. It is that transformational change. When we secure a Green Amendment in the Washington State Constitution, we will be lifting up environmental rights so they are given highest constitutional standing, recognition, and protection in every instance across the entire state of Washington. Now, in order to advocate for, to talk about, to educate about a Green Amendment, we need to understand what a Green Amendment is. And I want to alert you that its terminology matters, and the definition of what a Green Amendment is actually matters. You may hear people a lot of times talking about environmental rights amendments and suggesting that this gives the kind of powerful protection we're talking about here. There are lots of environmental rights amendments, language in lots of state constitutions across the nation that talk about the environment, that talk about environmental protection and how important it is, that talk about people having environmental rights, but they do not accomplish the highest level of protection that we get when we seek and secure passage of a Green Amendment. Not every environmental rights amendment is a Green Amendment, but every Green Amendment is an environmental rights amendment. So terminology matters. And I just wanted to alert you to this because it may come up at points in conversation. Somebody might say, oh, Massachusetts or Illinois, they have an amendment of this kind and it doesn't make a difference. And the answer is no, they don't. No, they don't. They have language, but they don't have a Green Amendment. So what is a Green Amendment? What makes an environmental rights amendment a Green Amendment? Well, it is language that gets placed in the Bill of Rights section, or in the state of Washington, the Declaration of Rights section of the state constitution. That is where we recognize and protect all the other human, civil, and political rights we hold dear, right? These rights that are fundamental to us as people. If we want our environmental rights to have the same highest level of protection that those other fundamental rights do, we have to place our environmental rights in that same section of the Constitution. There are key legal protections and bodies of law and interpretation that come into play for the fundamental rights that are articulated in the Declaration of Rights section of the Washington State Constitution. So we want the environment to have those highest beneficial protections under the law. We've got to put the environment in the Declaration of Rights section of the Washington State Constitution. We have to be clear about what we're protecting. We are protecting the rights of all people to fundamental essentials of life: clean water, clean air, a safe climate, healthy ecosystems, healthy environments. We have to be clear that this is an amendment that applies to all government officials at every level of government in the state of Washington, from the local town council all the way up to the legislators, right? Including to the governor's office, the environmental protection regulators, everybody, the attorney general, every government official in the state of Washington must be bound by the rights and the obligations that are articulated in the Green Amendment, in order for it to have its highest protection and to meet that Green Amendment definition. All Green Amendments have to be what we call self-executing. It means that the language in the amendment has legal strength in its own right. You don't need to have a law that actually applies it in every circumstance. If you are in a community and you can demonstrate, you believe through science and facts and law and presentation that your right to clean and healthy water and air are being violated to that constitutional level, even if you can't find a specific piece of legislation that's being violated, even if there are existing laws that regulators will say are already being complied with, you can actually turn to your constitutional entitlement and say, wait a second, I have a constitutional right that's being infringed upon. It's irrelevant that there is not an existing piece of legislation to specifically address my issue in this context. It's irrelevant that that industrial operation is complying with an existing permit, because when you look at it in context, my right to clean water and clean air is being violated. So it's self-executing. It's enforceable in its own right. All Green Amendments, well, I just said it, are enforceable by the people. There are some of the state constitutions where you have an environmental rights amendment. They may say things like people have a right to clean water and clean air as defined by the state legislature. As soon as you add that as defined by the state legislature kind of language, you've actually stripped the right away from the people and simply reaffirmed that the authority lies entirely with the legislators to decide how clean is clean. So it's really important that the way the language is framed and written ensures that ultimately it is a right that belongs to the people and is enforceable by the people if it's infringed upon. These are essentials that must be in a Green Amendment. But if you want to have an even more powerful Green Amendment, right? If you want to have the gold standard of a Green Amendment, there are critical value-added provisions. Among them are that the amendment will specifically make clear that the environmental rights of all the people must be protected equitably, regardless of race, ethnicity, tribal affiliation, wealth, gender, geography. Right? This happens, this environmental justice level of protection actually happens because of the recognition of the Green Amendment, that it is protecting the rights of all people because of the Declaration of Rights placement. So we really get this environmental justice value from the Green Amendment elements that I've already laid out. But if we want to be absolutely clear with all of our government officials, including the justices that may be making a decision over a court legal action, it helps to be very explicit that the obligation is to protect the environmental rights of all the people equitably. It's very value added to say that these are rights that must be protected generationally. Right? We are protecting these rights. We are protecting the state's natural resources for present and future generations. This is not just pretty sounding language. This is actually legally meaningful, enforceable language. When you, as a legislator or a government official, have to be taking action that protects the rights of future generations to a clean, safe, and healthy environment, it strengthens the obligation to look at cumulative impacts over space and over time, to do that long range thinking and decision making, rather than just thinking about 2 years down the road and what may lie in store for you at the next election, for example. It's helpful to identify other essential qualities of the environment that are important to the people of the state, the human health values of the environment, the cultural values of the environment, the recreational values of the environment. This provides additional clarity on why we are protecting the environmental rights of the people and the natural resources of the state. It's also very powerful to identify the state as being the trustee of the state's natural resources with an obligation to protect these natural resources for the benefit of the people who are the beneficiaries. This also brings into play a strengthened level of legal understanding on what are the obligations of government officials when you have a Green Amendment in place. If the state is the trustee of the state's natural resources for the benefit of the people, then there are fiduciary obligations that come into play. They are obligated to undertake informed decision-making, to make sure that their decisions are prioritizing protection of the environment for the benefit of people, not their friends in industry or their other buddies in the political arena. So this strengthens the environmental justice values of the amendment because trustees are obliged to protect the trust resources, in this case, the natural resources of the state, to protect them for the benefit of all the beneficiaries, again, equitably. So we have additional environmental justice value and strength when we use trustee language. When we put in place these kinds of elements into a constitutional amendment, we not only have put into place a Green Amendment, but we have really empowered the law in the state and empowered the people of the state when it comes to environmental protection. We have literally raised up the rights of the people to clean water, clean air, a safe climate, and healthy environments. So they are given highest constitutional standing recognition and protection, that they are given the same constitutional standing as those other fundamental rights that we talked about earlier, like the right to free speech, the right to freedom of religion. Right? We all know how powerfully these rights are protected because they are recognized in the Declaration of Rights section of the state constitution and the federal constitution. We all know because of that highest constitutional recognition and protection that if people believe that their rights are being infringed upon and they claim this, right? Government officials, the press, the courts, everybody pays attention. Everybody wants to work to understand what the problem is and to make it right because there is a constitutional right at play. There is a constitutional duty on government officials to ensure that right is protected to the highest level. So when we see the right to free speech, when we see the right to freedom of religion, when we see the right to peaceably assemble being infringed upon, we also see people sit up, government officials, the courts, the press, sit up, pay attention, and take notice. They don't just lightly ignore it. So when we have a Green Amendment in place in our state constitution, that same kind of power and the ability to garner that same kind of attention now comes into play for the environment. We really do ensure that all government officials at every level of government, from the local town council, again, to the legislators, to the governors, to the attorney general, become constitutionally obliged to protect the environmental rights of the people and the natural resources of the state equitably for all people in all generations. Every single one of these words now matters and has enforceable power. With a Green Amendment in play, we strengthen the existing laws that exist in the state because now every existing environmental protection law in the state of Washington must be interpreted and applied through the lens of how that law will help legislators and regulators and government officials fulfill their obligation, their constitutional obligation to protect the environmental rights of the people and the natural resources of the state. And when good government officials want to do better, when they want to pass stronger laws or regulations or render better decisions, then the Washington Green Amendment becomes a powerful foundation to help them. We help fill the gaps in the law. We help address long ignored issues and deficiencies because, again, people can turn to the Constitution for protection when existing laws are fundamentally failing them. And when our government officials do get it wrong, right, when they don't do the proper interpretation or application of legislation or regulation, then we, the people, if we believe our rights have been infringed upon, we can get access to the courts. So we really do strengthen the law, but we also empower activists, because now every single one of us are not just fighting for the environments we love, the people we love, but we are fighting for a constitutional right. And so every time we speak to a government official or we testify at a hearing, first words out of our mouth, I have a right to clean air and clean water, a safe climate and healthy environment. And you will quote your Green Amendment. And what we see is that Green Amendments are used by people as well as government officials to better protect the environment. It really is not an us versus them. Everybody who wants to do right by the environment in the state gets a better opportunity to do so. This is what Washington State's Green Amendment looks like. It would add to Article 1 of the state constitution the language that the people of the state, including future generations, have the right to a clean and healthy environment, including pure water, clean air, healthy ecosystems, and a stable climate, to the preservation of the natural, cultural, scenic, and healthful qualities of the environment. The state, including each branch, agency, and political subdivision, shall serve as trustee of the natural resources of the state, among them its waters, air, flora, fauna, climate, and public lands. The state shall conserve, protect, and maintain these resources for the benefit of all the people, including generations yet to come. These rights are inherent, inalienable, indefeasible. They are rights reserved to the people on par with other protected inalienable rights, and the state shall equitably protect these rights for all people, regardless of their race, ethnicity, geography, or wealth, and shall act with prudence, loyalty, impartiality, and equitable treatment of all beneficiaries in fulfilling its trustee obligations. And the provision of this section are self-executing. So you'll see through the highlighted elements, all those aspects of a Green Amendment definition are clearly fulfilled. The Green Amendment movement is a national movement. We have Green Amendments existing in 3 states, Pennsylvania, Montana, and New York, and they are making a powerful difference there. And we've got 14 other states where Green Amendment proposals have been put forth, and more states coming on board all the time. And Washington State is very much a leader in this movement. You have been on it for a couple of years, really helping to spread the word and make the difference. And actually, some of the language modifications that we see in the Washington State Green Amendment have served as models that I have used and encouraged in other states. If you want to stay informed with the Green Amendment movement, there is a website, www.wa for Washington, greenamendment.org. You're going to find lots of information and resources there. And we also have an online community action platform that you can access through your computer or through your phone, right, by going to the App Store. The information will be in the chat, but this app is a good place to get hot information fast, and also to share your ideas with other activists. You can join the Washington Green Amendment community and just talk with people about the Washington Green Amendment, or you can also join the national community. Oops, I meant to go late. And then the one final thing is, of course, there is a book that does lay all of this out. Actually, Washington features prominently in that book, and we have a special discount code, 20% off if you type in the word amendment. And I just want you to know all proceeds from the book go to the Green Amendment effort. Nothing goes into my pocket, because this is about saving the world, not making money. And so with that, I'm going to stop my screen share, and we can engage in some discussion.
Thank you, Maya. I see people are, thank you for that wonderful presentation. Everybody, please give Maya a hand. We will start the discussion now, and I see many of you have your hands raised. We're going to toggle between questions in the chat and those that have their hand raised. And right now I see Linda having your hand raised. Would you come off mute and go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind is I love everything about this, and the big stickler I see that might need some work is to have a right to a stable climate. That's how you define what that is. Climates don't stay stable. I mean, they should stay relatively stable, but I think there needs to be a little more definition around that, because I could see that as being a sticking point. That's it. But thank you so much, Maya. That's just wonderful. Thank you.
No, so thanks so much, Linda, for that great point, because it's a really great opportunity to talk about how a green amendment gets defined. I mean, the truth is, you're asking the question about stable climate, but often I hear the question about, well, what is pure water? What is clean air? What is a healthy environment? That's all very broad language. So how do we know what it means? And the thing is the by design, the Green Amendment uses broad language so that it can in fact cover all aspects of environmental protection over space and in time, even things that we can't imagine. And broad language is typical of constitutional Declaration of Rights provisions. If we look at the Declaration of Rights, we see things like the right to freely speak. What that may mean to you could be different than what it means to David or Iris or, somebody else. And so what happens with all constitutional language is it gets defined. In the first instance, there's an effort by the legislature to define it, and then in one context or another, when it comes to climate or water, and then we have regulations, and then we have permitting, and then we have individual decisions. And so there is actually a process where government does seek to try to define the amendment in various aspects of our lives. But when they get it wrong, or when there's a big gap, we, the people, have the ability to turn to the amendment to challenge what they've said or what they've done, and demonstrate if it's problematic. So when it comes to that stable climate terminology, it's going to happen in the same way. And just like when in Washington state, legislators are thinking about issues around climate, they're looking at the existing science. They're looking at what is happening in the international arena, what is coming out of Washington, D.C. With the science and the information about climate and how do we protect it, and what are the appropriate standards. The same thing is going to happen around that stable climate terminology. We're going to look to the science. We're going to look to experience. Legislators and regulators are going to try in the first instance to define, but we, the people, will have the ability to challenge if we think there's a problem. And the truth is, whether you picked stable climate, healthy climate, safe climate, we run through this wrangle, frankly, in every state. Whatever term you pick, your question will be asked just using that other term. So it's part of the process. And in Washington state, when the amendment language was evolving, people felt most comfortable with stable climate, but there is no one definition. That will have to be defined through time and action in Washington state.
Bridget, do you have somebody in the chat who has a question?
Yes, so we have a few, and I'm doing my best to sort of collect them, but if I miss yours, feel free to direct message me or just post it again. I think the first was from Kevin asking about the recent Montana decision, saying that Montana courts recently agreed with our Children's Trust contention that Montanans have a right to clean air and water in a stable climate. I heard the court agreed because the Montana state constitution includes a passage to support the environment. Would a Washington state Green Amendment create similar constitutional content, which would improve the ability of our Children's Trust to win similar court rulings in our state?
Yes. And one of the reasons why our Children's Trust, they've done wonderful work, and they've actually brought lawsuits in multiple states, Oregon, Virginia, there Alaska, there are a slew of them. And what we see, unfortunately, is in no small part, those cases tend to get dismissed at the early stages because they're based on constitutional language that suffers from some of the fundamental flaws, like what I mentioned as an example earlier. They might talk about the people having a right to a healthy environment as defined by the legislature. right? And that then robs it of its legal strength. And if the legislature passes a law that says clean water is water so contaminated that it's going to give kids cancer, well, the Constitution gives them that right and authority to do it. What was different in Montana was Montana has a Green Amendment. They have language that protects in the Declaration of Rights section of the Constitution that recognizes and protects the rights of all the people to a clean and healthful environment. And then there's some additional language lower down in the Constitution that helps define and strengthen that language. Because of that self-executing Bill of Rights clarity, the foundation was there for Our Children's Trust plaintiffs to challenge a piece of legislation passed by the Montana legislature that prohibited government officials in the state from considering the ramifications of their actions and decisions on the climate and the climate crisis. Because there was a right to a clean and healthful environment, the youth plaintiffs were able to defeat that law. So when we get that kind of Green Amendment in the state of Washington, we'll have that same power for the people and the youth of Washington to take on bad government action, whether it's the climate context or other environmental contexts. One of the things I want you to know is that over the years, right, what I've tried to do is take all of the learnings from Pennsylvania and Montana, which were the first Green Amendment states, and learn how we can do a better job at crafting Green Amendment language. So one of the things is because Montana only protected the right to a clean and healthful environment, the first threshold question was whether or not a clean and healthful environment includes a safe climate. And so much of the time of much of the trial was spent proving that point. And the judge came to the right conclusion. Safe climate is part of a clean and healthful environment, but there's always the risk that a judge wouldn't agree. So in order to avoid that risk, and in order to avoid all those days of having to prove the point that a clean and healthful environment should include a stable or safe climate, what I recommend for states and what we see in Washington is that climate is specifically mentioned as being amongst the rights of the people that must be protected.
I see hands raised from Darlene, Martha, Tom, and Howard. Darlene, are you still wanting to ask a question?
Yes.
Go ahead. And then
Maya, wonderful, huge applause, and I'll track this and sign in and share it with others to support also.
thank you.
But what I hear is still what I've heard since the 50s or the 70s. It's human-centric, and I would rather it say should be, the beneficiary should be Earth and its constituents, not the people, because that's humans. And everything is for humans, and I don't agree with that. I always have a negative response to that. So I'd rather see something like recognizing that the plants and the trees and the other non-human animals and human animals, we're all in this together. We're all connected. Humans rely on everything else. We are not at the top of the chain. We're actually at the bottom. So that's my comment.
So Darlene, I really respect and appreciate that perspective. I personally believe very deeply in the rights of nature and ensuring that we respect and protect their rights. And there may at some point down the line be a rights of nature addition to the Washington Green Amendment, and we would have to think about how that would happen. But the truth is, the way the constitutional process works, fundamentally it is human-centric, right? It is recognizing the rights of people and then allowing people to protect those rights. And even if we recognize rights of nature, ultimately nature needs people to come in and defend her. And the way our system of laws works and the way the Constitution works, having an anthropocentric, human-centric focus actually results in stronger language that can be more effectively enforced, at least in the near term, given the current state of the law in Washington and nationwide. So I really respect your perspective. But this, I think, provides a really powerful, more powerful platform for people to do the work of rising up and defending and protecting nature the way it actually needs us to defend and protect it and respect it. So I hear you, but that's one of the reasons why that human-centric approach is taken here.
Bridget, you have a question from the chat.
Yes, we are getting lots. Anne is asking, how do you see a green amendment intersecting with the clean energy transition?
Well, I mean, in terms of state law, yeah. So as I indicated earlier, what the amendment should do is really strengthen how that law is interpreted and how it is applied, because there's an obligation to protect the climate, to protect the rights of future generations. The Green Amendment really should help advance truly beneficial clean and renewable energy projects, help protect them from inappropriate legal challenges, but also help ensure that if there is a clean and renewable energy project that's going to have devastating consequences, that those devastating consequences are not just lightly ignored, that they actually are addressed as part of the decision-making process. So I think the long and the short of it, without having to delve into all the wrinkles of the specific law, is this amendment is going to help strengthen how it's interpreted, how it's applied, will help advance good, clean, and renewable energy in the state, but not give it a pass. I mean, give it a pass when there's something bad that happens.
I have on my end Martha, then Tom, then Howard. So go ahead, Martha.
Yes, hello. Thank you for joining us. This is just wonderful, Maya. Yes. So if the Green Amendment were to pass, would it supersede any city codes that, for example, are undermining urban tree protection? Seattle is our largest city. We have a critical housing crisis, but many of the new homes being built are market rate. And the department who is responsible for regulating those trees is the Department of Construction and Inspection, who issues permits for those lots. Those trees are not being protected as a result. And it's been a big struggle to get legislators and city officials to recognize that trees are critical where the housing is. We are told that, yes, we have to stop urban sprawl. We have to stop people from, driving 40 miles away to live. And often they have to, because that's where it's more affordable. But at the same time, they're not grasping that if a huge madrona or, Doug fir stands on the corner of a lot and a developer comes along and insists on putting a driveway there or literally covering every square footage, which now the tree code allows, that something needs to change, that just isn't viable or sustainable for people's public health, climate resiliency, all of the things you're talking about.
So it's not going to supersede any existing law, ordinance, regulation, protection that exists in the state. It's going to either inform how that law should be interpreted and applied, again, through that lens of ensuring environmental rights are protected, or if it's not an environmental provision, it's going to add to it, because there's now going to be this duty of the government officials to ensure that their government, that they are not infringing on people's environmental rights, and that they are fulfilling their trustee obligation when it comes to natural resources protection. Now, that being said, we do have to understand that this isn't going to be an instant panacea for everything. So we are still going to have some problems. Not every environmental decision, while it may have an adverse environmental impact, is necessarily going to be deemed to rise to the constitutional level. So when we're talking about individual tree removal, I would suggest to you that the way the Constitution should strengthen and inform the ability of the town council to do better when it comes to protecting those resources. But if it were to rise to a constitutional level, we are going to have to be thinking bigger picture, sort of the way you did. It can't be framed about the removal of a single tree. Maybe it's about a program where you're programmatically decimating, or yeah, you're just going to have to think. The Constitution is a stronger level of protection, but there is also a higher burden when we're talking about a constitutional violation, and we're going to have to meet that responsibility. So, but it can provide a powerful platform for government officials who want to do better to actually do better, and then to defend it in part based on their interpretation of the existing laws through that environmental rights lens.
And just quickly, that higher burden is, Maya, and that higher burden is just what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go to court and challenge, I'm just going to say, if your neighbor cuts down a tree and it bothers you, and that tree was important to you, it is unlikely that you're going to be able to make a constitutional claim based on that, unless it was the last tree that housed the last bird of a particular species, right? So we just have to remember to support a constitutional argument, right? A legislator telling you to shut up is not likely to violate your right to free speech. Maybe there's a specific context, right? So we really have to be thinking there's a higher burden of care, but there's also then a higher duty of responsibility on us as those enforcing the Constitution to make sure that when we bring forth arguments and claims, that they are meeting that constitutional level of burden or impact.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, and thank you for the response. We are getting close to 1 o'clock, so I want to say goodbye to those who have to leave. Again, our goal is and we are going to stay on for more questions for those that can. So please stay on if you can. I want to state again that our goal was to provide you the confidence to reach out to at least 5 additional people who maybe are new to the Washington Green Amendment concept. And the Green Amendment team here in Washington State is glad to help you gain that confidence. So reach out to us either through my direct email, which Monica's putting in the chat, or through the app. What to expect? We are this year, I don't think it is not the year for the Green Amendment. We are still building the momentum that legislators have said we want to see the constituency. We hope to get a hearing in the Environment and Energy Committee, and we would like to be able to reach out to you all with an easy way to nudge those legislators. If you are uncomfortable, we'd like to use this registration email list to send that easy legislative action to. If you are uncomfortable with it, can you please put your name in the chat and ask us not to send you that? We do not send out a lot of emails, only essential stuff. Just to let you know. Thank you for spending your time with us today. I hope you heard something that you like. Love to hear your comments. Love to have you involved. Do reach out, and appreciate you all for being here today. And for those that can, please stay on, and we'll continue with a question from the chat that Bridget has.
Sure. So the next question, sorry, I'm going back and forth between a bunch of things. Anne is asking, how do you see a Green Amendment intersecting? Oh, sorry, that was the last one. Carla is asking, what is the tribal response across the U.S. to this effort?
Mm-hmm. So every state is different, right? We ultimately would like to have a federal Green Amendment, but right now we're going state by state by state, and so there is a very intentional effort in every state to engage with the indigenous people of that state, to get their input on the language and to help them understand what the amendment would mean for them. We make clear that they, as sovereign nations, if indigenous peoples are federally recognized, right, and they are a sovereign nation, this does not impose any sort of duty or burden on them, right? It does not infringe on their sovereignty. But what it does mean is, if their people, individually or collectively, are being adversely harmed by an action or decision by government that is resulting in an infringement of their environmental rights, that they may be able to rely on the Constitutional Green Amendment to challenge that bad action and to get a remedy. So I have not heard in any of the states where we're working, I have never heard any opposition from the indigenous people of that state. We've only heard support and secured great engagement. And in a number of instances, our legislative champions, like Representative Lekanoff in Washington State, like Representative Shannon Pinto or Senator Shannon Pinto in New Mexico, are actually amongst our legislative champions proposing the Green Amendment.
On my end, I have Tom next, and then we'll go to Bridget, and then to you, Howard, if you're able to stay on. Go ahead, Tom. Thank you for waiting.
My question is pretty short. The Adopt Stream, I'm director of the Adopt a Stream Foundation, and the board of directors has a meeting next week to discuss whether or not to be participants in the Green Amendment process. And a couple of my board members want to know, what does it mean beyond being supportive to be lend an organization's name to the Green Amendment process? And
David,
one of them specifically asked, cost. Is this a lobbying effort? Because 501c3s are only allowed to, spend so much time in the lobbying world and so forth. So these are kind of practical questions.
Do you want to start, Dave, from your perspective, and then I can add on if need be?
Sure. I think the ask is really simple at this point for being a supporting organization. We would like to have a connection with somebody in the organization who we can send information to distribute to their constituents, either through their listserv or through their newsletter. At this point, that is really the ask. Can we put your name on our website so that legislators can see that we have these supporting organizations around the state? Yeah, and that's as simple as that.
And in terms I was just going to say, in terms of 501c3 status, as David said, really our efforts are very focused at this point on education, on outreach, on information, on providing expertise. Those are all 501c3 functions.
Is that helpful, Tom?
Yep.
Okay, and feel free to reach out to me if there's other additional questions from your board. Bridget, go ahead.
Okay, so Bruce is asking, how do we build the local infrastructure for this campaign? We need fundraising, social media, a treasurer, graphic designs, a volunteer coordinator, and other staff. Statewide vote will require these resources. I don't know if Maya or Dave, either of you.
I was going to say, I always let David on the organizing things. I always give David the opportunity to go first, and I'll only add on if I feel like there's something value added.
Great question. So that's up to us, the people of the state, to build that level of support. We are really gaining momentum right now, and would love to have enough people interested in the Green Amendment where we can build committees to do some of the work which you just mentioned. We have a very talented and organized strategic team. And now we have the support of 24 organizations. So I think we really do have a foundational level to build the type of committee work that's needed, as you had mentioned.
Yeah. And also, Bruce, recognizing, as you said, financial resources are needed. And that's one of the things that Green Amendments for the Generations is not. We are a national organization, but we are not a big money organization. We are about as grassroots as you can get. But one of the things, because we are C3, is we do work with our partners in each of the states to try to identify and pursue funding opportunities, particularly grants. And so as the 501c3, it's not uncommon that we will apply in partnership with our our local state partners. The resources can come to us as the C3, and then we can sort of pass them through on to support the state action. But getting grants often depends on relationship. And, you know, the best people with the best relationships and the best knowledge are the people of the state. And so the truth is, if any of you happens to have some experience with a foundation that funds in Washington State, you want to pass along their name to us so that we can investigate them. If you happen to have a relationship with a program officer or a trustee member or anybody at that foundation, that can be helpful. You can help us make the connection necessary to raise the kind of resources that you're talking about. You know, again, through this partnership, the foundations often, of course, want to support the local state effort, but they also value the fact that there is the expertise of us as a partner. And so we pursue these funds collaboratively, but we need help. Like in everything else, you know, this is all a collaborative effort. So if you have ideas or knowledge, we would love to hear them. And, you know, David and I will circle up with the team and do the best we can to pursue it, hopefully with your help.
You've got it. I just wondered, how do I contact the strategic team here in Washington, David?
You're on mute, David. Bruce, his email is in the chat. It was just reposted in the chat, dakipnis@gmail.com. And I think my email was posted in the chat earlier. So if you get to David, you know, you get to the team. If you email me, you get to the team. We work very collaboratively.
And I will put Maya's email again in the chat in just a second, but the next question, I am trying to, sort through and sort of combine things for the sake of time.
Bridget, I think it's Howard who's next.
Okay.
And then Allison, I see your hand raised too, but in between, we'll get back to a chat question. Go ahead, Howard.
Yeah, and I wanted to build on the conversation you had with Darlene and turn it to whether the amendment could and should be interpreted to grant standing to natural entities in a way that supporters through citizen suits could then be trustees for the rivers, for the forests, and perhaps not for individual trees, but to go back to the very old doctrine of, or the old question of should trees have standing, and to put in, to the extent there's opportunity, if it's not already implied, that this means to recognize the legal rights of the resources with the human trustees as their advocates. And I know, as I'm sure you're aware, that's part of a somewhat larger movement that the Earth Law Institute and others are pursuing. And I'm asking to see whether at this stage there's subtlety in the way the amendment's worded, or the legislative history, or the initiative's history is created to get that standing question addressed in a way that would really give us the opportunity to have that forum.
Mm-hmm. So I do not think, as an attorney, I do not think that you can interpret the existing language in the way you're talking about. It really is about a rights of people that, if infringed upon, but amongst the rights of the people are the duty on government officials to protect the natural resources of the state for the benefit of all the people and generationally. But it really is anthropocentric. So I don't think that that you can get there with the current language. I think also, and as you intimated, whether you're talking about rights of nature or rights of people, it is always going to be about the people having to go into the courtroom and make the case. And so having this anthropocentric approach, again, it's the way the Constitution really is about the people, giving government the ability to govern over them, permission to govern over them, but then also articulating those rights that fundamentally belong to the people that they are holding unto themselves to be protected from infringement. Under that structure, all aspects of the Constitution are human-centric, and the way we're doing the environmental rights is in keeping with that. So again, I don't think you can interpret it the way you're saying. I think that there has been, in many states, there has been this conversation about integrating rights of nature into a green amendment and how that might be done. And I've certainly done that thought exercise. It is my personal opinion that while there are many, many people who believe in the power and importance of the rights of nature, there are many, many people who do not. And strategically, if one integrates that into the Green Amendment language in this critical moment when we're trying to get this movement going and to get this more powerful protection passed, we invite a lot of opposition that we don't need. And that will likely derail the amendment in the near term in most places, right? In most places. So that strategically, it makes more sense to go get the human-centric approach, lift it, get this much more powerful protection, get this change in thinking about the environment being an entitlement, being a right entitled to highest level of protection. Get that first. Once we secure that and the benefits of that, then maybe circle back with a second tier that's a rights of nature amendment, and do it as a step 2, because we will have brought people along in a chain of thinking that's going to make them much more primed and prepared for getting to that important next step. But right now, so many people are not there that we are creating an immense hurdle for ourselves if we try to include rights of nature. And then again, I just believe fundamentally, as an attorney, I believe, as somebody who believes, I talked to nature before I came to this talk. I do it all the time. So I really believe in the rights of nature and nature having its own voice, but I believe we get what we need for nature in the near term by going down this approach much more powerfully. So.
Well, I don't want to disagree on the strategic analysis because you're close to it. I was just thinking that there are subtleties with beneficiary status and trustee status under that rubric. And so that's where that came from. But I appreciate your analysis and wouldn't quarrel with your conclusion.
No, and you can quarrel. I just like to be honest, right? And about like what I'm thinking in the conversations that we had early on with the team. So, whoops.
Oops. Thanks, Howard, for the question. Bridget, do we have, so Maya, we're at 1:15 here. How do we want to handle the load of questions that we
I can stay on, I'm not sure. I don't know if you all see something odd happening on your screen.
I do.
I don't know what's happening on my screen.
I think it's Bruce. I think Bruce, you have accidentally started a whiteboard that's
a screen share.
shared.
Oh, got it.
Thanks, Bruce.
I mean, to be honest with you, I am content to stay on a bit longer to ask questions. I'm also, understand to want to be respectful of people's time, and also to let people know we do have planned a second training, which we thought would focus on frequently asked, would be more question and answer. So we would go through frequently asked questions, some of which have already been asked, but many which have not, to help people understand how the amendment would work. And then we would follow up on that with additional Q&A. So
Monica, can you post the frequently asked questions and talking points into the chat so people have that? We will stay on. There's still 36 people who stayed on, so half the people have left and half have stayed on. So Maya, if you're willing,
sure.
I think people are willing. It's not like we're down to 5 or anything. So Bridget, why don't you take 2 from the chat, and then we'll get to Jeannie live here.
Sure. So Abby.
Allison. I think it'll be Allison next.
Abby is asking does the Green Amendment allow people to defend their constitutional right to a clean environment against corporations, or only allows people to sue the government? I know this was touched on a bit, I think, during the presentation, but just to make that extra clear.
Yeah. So the amendment, as with other Declaration of Rights provisions, is fundamentally focused on government action and activity. So it's a great question. right? So we will always be looking for that government action that we are challenging when we're trying to address whatever problem we're trying to address. That being said, couple of things. First off, when industrial operators are operating, they are generally operating under law, right? They've gotten permission from some governmental entity that's permitted their pollution. And maybe they're violating their permit, but then there's a choice by that governmental entity to potentially not enforce the existing law. That failure to act is an action by government that can be challenged. And we've demonstrated that in Pennsylvania. So whether you're talking about an overt decision by government to pass a law, pass a regulation, issue a permit, issue approval, provide funding for something that is resulting in the constitutional violation, or whether you're talking about a government's conscious choice, a failure to enforce existing law, to address some serious level of contamination that's rising to the constitutional level, you should be able to get at the action or activity that's of concern that is happening, right? It's just like if you think about a police officer, right? A police officer is not allowed to run into your house unless they have a search warrant. They also can't tell David to run into your house, right? As some sort of workaround about not having a search warrant. The same thing happens with the environment. The government cannot give somebody approval to violate your constitutional rights. And that if they did, that approval is the government action. That's the problem that gets challenged through the Constitution, for example.
Such great questions. Bridget, you got another one? And then I think we have Allison live. And if not, then Janine.
Yeah, sure. So this is more of a process question. Ellen's asking if we've considered a citizens initiative for the Green Amendment in Washington.
So there are two pathways. I'm not sure. I'll have to look if citizen initiative is an option in Washington. I think it may be. I'll look. We have it on the website. Let me look.
It is an option.
Yeah. So I will tell you that in all of the states where a citizen initiative is an option, there has been a conscious choice to pursue the legislative approach first because it seems more accessible and more doable. There has in Florida, the effort is going by citizen initiative because the legislative approach is simply out of the question. And there is consideration in Oregon now about doing like a 1-2, doing citizen initiative, but complemented by a legislative approach. So you're covering both angles. But there is a much higher level of need for resources and volunteers and organizing and engagement with the citizen initiative approach than with the legislative approach. So there's been a conscious choice in Washington to start with the legislative approach that it seems like it should be very accessible in the state of Washington with good education, action, and engagement from communities and legislators to get us there. So there was a choice to go down that path first.
Allison, are you still present and have a question? Janine, go ahead.
I'm going to go look for on our website, or maybe Bridget, you can on the website. I believe we have posted the ways in Washington state that you can actually amend the Constitution. And I'm not positive. There are usually three ways, right? There's legislative approach, citizen initiative, and constitutional convention. And not every state has every approach, but we have Washington's process up on the website, wagreenamendment.org.
I can put it in the chat.
Hi, Janine. Did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. So I see that it's gotten a couple of different sessions worth of hearings in Washington. And I'm curious, after 2 sessions of that, have there been any pivots? Have there been any changes to what the next bill will look like or does look like in terms of being able to get it to be successful? I mean, how do we get this to a vote?
So we're not really at that point, right? We haven't had feedback that has necessitated modifications to the language, other than in the very first year, there were questions about the trustee language and how that interacted with Article 16, Section 1. And so we did make some minor modifications back at that time. I don't remember exactly what they were, but it was a good point. So we heard it and a modification was made. I don't think that anything has been heard through that process to date that made anybody feel like there needed to be additional adjustment. But
So
I think
just-
people are open.
Just as a follow-up then, so the thinking here is that after 2 introductions like this, that it's simply a matter of getting enough co-sponsors or getting enough, I mean, if we can get it into session, it's gotten 2 hearings. How do we get it to a vote, actually? Is it about numbers of people that call their legislators and say, hey, this is what we really want? Or is there something about the the bill itself that's keeping it from getting a vote? I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
I think it's really all of the above. I mean, I'll sorry, David, if you want to offer first.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Maya, finish your thought and then I will add something.
So really, we have been very much in the campaign focused on the outreach, on the engagement. There really is not enough engagement and awareness at this point to suggest that, nor has there been input or feedback to suggest that the problem is the language. And it's not that it's a problem. The truth is, we're talking about a constitutional amendment. A constitutional amendment always takes time. It just does. And there are a lot of legislative priorities that it competes with. And we've had to work very, very hard to get the people of Washington State and the organizations of Washington State to become aware of this movement and to realize that this is an important priority, regardless of what your concern is when it comes to the environment, environmental justice, climate, generational protection. This is worthy of being part of your palette of priorities. And we've been really focused primarily on that, as has Representative Lakanoff, as opposed to sort of working the legislative process. And I think that we're still in that mode. It's still about education, outreach, engagement. That's where we're focusing our attention. And again, there's been no indication. And I will tell you, in other states, right, there's no amendment, there's no green amendment that has been proposed and passed instantaneously, right? The only state that's passed a green amendment in the modern era since I started the movement is New York. We have one in Pennsylvania, Montana, and they have their own story. You can read about that in the book or watch another talk. But New York, it took what, 4 or 5 years, right? Because it's a process. And so we're just working the process in Washington.
The strategic team we do our work in a very calm way, acknowledging that this is a long-term effort. That everything Maya just said is true. And we have talked to Republican representatives who don't hate the idea, but they say, show me the constituency. And I think there is a lot of momentum this year with, again, 24 organizations signing on, with 200 people attending this. Bruce mentioned of the work to be done. And that is all true. We need more people, and we are still in the building phase. Go ahead, Bridget. Let's see. So we're at 1:26. Let's take 2 more questions. And yeah, 2 more questions on your end, Bridget.
You're on mute, Bridget.
I've been trying to sort of combine either, like-minded questions or questions that would have similar answers. And I don't have that, but I'm a little bit behind many right now. I know a lot of people have asked repeatedly about the bill number and a Senate companion bill. So I hope you've seen Monica's links that she's been posting and responding there. And we can also do a follow-up email that includes all of these links from the chat that we've been sharing.
How about this? Do you have a theme song? If not, would you like one? Sure.
Yeah, what a great idea. What a great idea, Sharon. Thank you. Do I have to sing? Of course I will. Yeah, go ahead with the question. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Someone is saying, I'm not seeing actually an actual question, since the last one I shared, I don't think.
Yeah, so we may have covered them all.
We might have covered. Sharon, you got one you want to ask real quick?
Yeah, besides the theme song, which we'll follow up on that later, because we do stuff like that. I'm not sure if you got to address the question of noise pollution or not.
So we were not asked that. Good question. So I will, noise is not included in the amendment. I will tell you that there is another state that does not have a green amendment, but to the extent that they talk about the Constitution, I believe it's Massachusetts, they do actually include noise, but again, they don't rise to the level of a green amendment or making a fundamental right. They're just talking about the environment and environmental protection, but they do mention noise. So it is sort of something that has been pondered. I'm not going to say that it would or it would not be implicated by the amendment. I think one would have to make the case. Certainly, noise can have very serious and significant ramifications for healthy ecosystems, right? In a lot of different ways. And so I think if one has the right set of circumstances and the right set of facts, and you got the science behind you and you can make the case, I don't think that there's any reason to suggest that could not be a viable or successful claim. You would just have to have all of those elements. It's not going to be my neighbor is mowing the lawn really loudly all the time, or all my neighbors are mowing the lawn really loudly all the time. It's going to have to be, again, that idea of that higher constitutional bar to bring a claim. You're going to have that connectivity with the elements. We do have in there the right of the people to a healthful environment. Noise has serious implications for people's health, right? So it's going to depend on the circumstance, I think.
This land is your land. Woody Guthrie.
Well, thank you all for your time today. So wonderful to see people that I've met, and great to meet new folks. Love to hear from all of you. There are some questions about, okay, so where's the bill this year? And I think what's happening is it's a short session, and Dolio and Representative Lekanoff is pushing Representative Dolio to suggest that a bill be created, and Dolio has to sort of accept the bill as the chair. They're working through that. And I think that's why we're going to get this legislative action out to you all and to our new supporting organizations, so that we can, from constituent level, say to them, get the bill written, get it heard this year. We want to build momentum, see our momentum, see what's happening. And this is not the year for the Green Amendment, but it is a momentum year. I'm feeling it, and I know our strategic team is too, and appreciate you all being here. Maya, thank you so much. Those of you who've left, please, let's give her a hand. Thank you for your time. Appreciate you all. And I want you to have a wonderful day. Look forward to communicating with you all soon. Best.